Welcome to the Marxist Workers Party's podcast, Izwi Labasebenzi, bringing reports and analysis of the news from a working class and Marxist perspective, fighting for jobs for all, a 12,500 Rand per month minimum wage and high-quality service delivery, organising to arm the workers and trade union movement with a revolutionary socialist and Marxist programme, building the struggle against capitalism and for working class political power and socialism.
The date is the 8th of February 2021. In this bulletin, alarming revelations about the State Security Agency at the Zondo Commission, Zuma defies the Constitutional Court, and mismanagement of the pandemic continues to hammer the living standards of the working class. Last week, the Zondo Commission heard alarming testimony on the extent of corruption within the State Security Agency, the SSA, under the Jacob Zuma presidency. This had gone so far that elements of a parallel state had begun to be built to further the interests of Zuma and his allies, the Radical Economic Transformation faction of the ANC, as it is now known. Anywhere up to 10 billion Rand was looted by Zuma, his ministers of state security and their deployees. Witnesses claim that under the so-called Project Commitment, Zuma received at least 80 million Rand in cash between 2015 and 2017. This was literally carried out of the SSA in installments of between 2.5 and 4.5 million Rand per month. Other projects included attempts to bribe judges presiding over cases impacting Zuma. One witness claimed this succeeded at least once. The SSA also funded media outlets, including the African news agency Newswire service, the CNBC Africa News Channel, and the online magazine Southern African Report. They were tasked with planting stories that portrayed Zuma and his presidency in a positive light, especially as the scale of corruption in the Zuma's rotten government began to be exposed. In December 2017, the month of the ANC's Nasrec conference, where the Zuma faction ultimately lost control of the ANC presidency to Cyril Ramaphosa, there was a big increase in cash outflows. This was almost certainly used to try and buy votes, mirroring the CR17's campaign own big business-funded war chest. Also deployed to Nasrec were agents of the so-called Special Operations Unit, an autonomous and unaccountable SSA unit, in other words, a rogue unit, that acted as Zuma's personal dirty tricks squad. Many of its agents were brought in by sidestepping normal recruitment procedures. It was also revealed that there was an outflow of guns and ammunition from the SSA during this time. Arming whom? For what? It is not yet clear. The conduct of both ANC factions confirms the irredeemably corrupt character of the ANC. It is not a political party where principled political and ideological differences are debated, but a criminal racket where control of various offices and the patronage networks that can be built from them go to those with the deepest pockets. Even now, as we will explain in the remainder of this bulletin, this nest of thieves continue to plot and scheme against each other, even as a historic pandemic burns through society at the cost of thousands of lives and the piling of additional suffering and misery on millions of working class families whose existence is already blighted by dire poverty. The only road out of this situation is through organization and mass struggle. This includes, crucially, the building of a mass workers' party that pushes the ANC aside and leads the working class in the socialist transformation of society.
Of all the new revelations at the Zondo Commission, it is crucial for the working class to register and digest the exposure of the dirty tricks being used against the workers' movement and other protest movements. Testimony at the Zondo Commission has again confirmed that the SSA was responsible for the creation of the Workers' Association Union on the Platinum Belt in 2014, following the Marikana massacre. The intention was to use WOW to undermine the AMCU trade union, which had displaced the ANC-aligned NUM as the dominant union amongst mine workers. The MWP's predecessor organisation, the Democratic Socialist Movement, which played a key role in the 2012 mine workers' strikes, was a victim of SSA spying and interference, in collusion with mining company bosses. In line with its denunciation of the mine workers' strike as counter-revolutionary, the SACP's Communist University project leader aided the state's activities by publishing the names and workplace addresses of leading DSM members on social media. In the so-called Project Academia, the 2016 Fees Must Fall movement was infiltrated. Also targeted were the NGO's Right to Know and the Council for Advancement of the South African Constitution, as well as activists and organisers around the Zuma Must Fall protests in 2017. The capitalist media has mostly passed over all of this, mentioning it only in passing. There is a reason for this. It is normal practice for capitalist governments to monitor, spy on, and even infiltrate and undermine the workers' movement, the socialist left, and other protest movements. This is the case even in those capitalist countries which claim to uphold the democratic rights of their citizens and claim to defend freedoms of speech, association, and so on. For example, in the UK, the oldest parliamentary democracy in the world, a so-called spy cop scandal is currently unfolding around police infiltration of socialist and anti-racist groups, including of the MWP's sister organisation, the Socialist Party of England and Wales, when it was still known as the Militant Tendency. Thabo Mbeki's government laid important foundations for Zuma when, in 2003, the mandate of the SSA's predecessor was expanded to include so-called political and economic intelligence. This is clear code for spying on the development of working-class organisation and struggle to defend the capitalist status quo against any threats to it. This, however, was an inevitable development once the ANC government had decisively chosen to defend capitalism against the working-class majority's demand for a rapid rise in living standards following the dismantling of apartheid, something that was impossible upon the basis of capitalism and would therefore increasingly bring the working class into collision with the ANC government. Capitalism is a system where a minority exploits the majority. It is, by its very nature, incompatible with genuine democracy. The ruling classes have been repeatedly forced to make concessions to the working class majority's democratic aspirations throughout history. Especially in the advanced capitalist countries, it was possible to grant what Marx and Lenin called bourgeois democracy, a superficially democratic mask that hides the capitalists' real economic dictatorship over society. But even here, the mask has often slipped. Things are even more precarious in the neo-colonial world. The democratic rights allowed to the working class under bourgeois democratic regimes are important tools to supplement the class struggle, but they can never develop fully to match the masses' democratic aspirations within the straitjacket of capitalism. Organisations like the SSA grow out of capitalism's contradictions, becoming a necessity for the ruling class to maintain its control of society. The parallel in methods between the SSA and the apartheid regime is not accidental. The sponsoring of WOW mirrors the apartheid regime's sponsoring of Inkatha's Amagundwane Union, UWUSA. The funding of the African News Agency mirrors the apartheid regime's funding of the Citizen newspaper. Under capitalism, no democratic rights can be taken for granted. They must be defended every step of the way and linked to the working class's struggle for socialism. Therefore, similar anti-working class intelligence operations will inevitably continue under the Ramaphosa presidency. Indicating as much, Ramaphosa's current Minister of Intelligence, Ayanda Dlodlo, attempted to stop the Zondo Commission from even proceeding with hearings on the SSA in order, she said, to protect so-called national security. The ruling class will need organisations like the SSA more than ever as the crisis of capitalism continues to deepen. A cleaned-up, professionalised intelligence agency will potentially be a greater threat to the working class than Zuma's crony gangster outfit. The MWP calls for the complete disbanding of the SSA. It needs no replacement.
Zuma's announcement that he will defy the Constitutional Court's order to reappear before the Zondo Commission has further increased tensions in the ANC's faction struggle. This decision itself is clearly influenced by the devastating revelations around the State Security Agency covered in previous items. In our 27th November podcast last year, we analysed in some detail the lines of division in the ANC faction struggle and the class contradictions they reflect. We also noted that while Ramaphosa has the upper hand, it was possible, given the deepening tensions, that a damaging split could not be ruled out. In desperation to avoid this, however, Ramaphosa is more and more tying his own hands, causing despair amongst the sections of the ruling class who look to him to stabilise capitalism on their behalf. At both the December and January meetings of the ANC's National Executive Committee, there was no action or even discussion of the arrest of General Secretary Ace Magashule on charges of fraud, corruption and money laundering. He remains in office, on duty, and on Zuma's defiance of the Concord and Zondo Commission, says he has done nothing wrong. It has also emerged that the report of the 2018 investigation into the SSA that formed the foundation for much of the testimony at the Zondo Commission last week has been in Ramaphosa's hands since December 2018. The report clearly implicates former Minister of State Security David Mahlobo and former SSA Director General Arthur Fraser as key architects in looting the SSA and organising unlawful operations. Yet, in May 2019, Ramaphosa retained Mahlobo in his cabinet, albeit demoting him to Deputy Minister in the Department of Human Settlements. Fraser, too, remains in high government office, currently Director General of Correctional Services. After 3 years as President, this continues to expose the hollowness of Ramaphosa's claim to be an anti-corruption crusader determined to clean up party and state.
The COVID-19 pandemic continues to be used for profiteering. In just 3 months last year, the ANC-run Gauteng government spent 431 million rand, nearly $500 million, sanitising and deep-cleaning schools. Scientific and legal experts canvassed by the journalists who exposed this massive overspending all agree. The work was completely unnecessary. Just like Gauteng's PPE tender scandal earlier in the pandemic, again, the outsourcing of services lies at the heart of this new tenderpreneur feeding frenzy. Some companies, predictably, as was the case in the PPE scandal, had no track record in the work they were bidding for. This scandal unfolded between June and August last year. Our listeners will be interested to learn that on the 4th of May, Executive Mokwevo, a leading MWP member, wrote to the Gauteng Department of Education on behalf of the Gauteng EPWP Workers Forum. In this letter, he reminded the department of the dismissal of 3,000 EPWP workers by the Gauteng government at the end of March, another of their many crimes against the working class in the course of this pandemic. Many of those workers had been employed in schools across the province, their duties often including cleaning work. The letter proposed that the EPWP workers should be re-employed and that, among other possible duties, they be put to work deep cleaning schools before they reopened. The letter was, of course, ignored. According to our calculations, the cost of re-employing the EPWP workers for 3 months at their previous rate of pay would have been approximately 32 million rand, not even 8% of the money the Gauteng government preferred to spend on inflated tenders. Elsewhere, the NGO Corruption Watch has released a report into widespread abuse by bosses of the now discontinued Temporary Employer-Employee Relief Scheme, TERS. The TERS used UIF funds, i.e. workers' savings, to top up wages in companies affected by the pandemic and lockdown. Corruption Watch explained that the most common corruption scenario was for bosses to reduce workers' pay, claim the TERS funds, but then not pass the money on in workers' wage packets, instead putting it in their own pockets. In addition, barely 9% of the 200 billion rand made available to banks in the loan guarantee scheme to pass on to struggling small businesses has been paid out. And there is little help for the working class and poor coming from elsewhere. The cost of a basic basket of food for one household has increased to over 4,000 rand per month. This is 500 rand more than the minimum wage of 3,500. When 43% are unemployed anyway, with no sign of Ramaphosa's promised 800,000 new jobs, and with the pathetic 350 rand per month social relief of distress grant now having ended. Taken together, all of this points toward the deepening crisis of capitalism, both politically and economically, and the desperate situation facing the working class, the poor, and even the middle class. The Marxist Workers Party fights for a 12,500 rand per month minimum wage and an 8,000 rand per month basic income grant linked to a massive programme of job creation, including the nationalisation, under the democratic control of workers, of all job-shedding big businesses. However, this can only be achieved through organisation and mass struggle. But where is the leadership of the working class? The implementation of the SAFTU Trade Union Federation's resolution in favour of creating a workers' party continues to be bureaucratically suppressed, and COSATU continues to prop up the ANC government. Nearly 2 months since the Labour Court of Appeal upheld the ANC government's attack on public sector pay, there is no preparation of public sector workers for general strike action. And SAFTU's 24th of February Section 77 socio-economic strike is barely 2 weeks away, yet there is little to no evidence of serious mobilisation and no clear demands, programme or strategy anywhere to be found. These obstacles at the top of the movement must be overcome urgently so that the working class can move onto the offensive and turn the tide in the class struggle. The Marxist Workers Party will return to the way forward for the workers and trade union movement in future podcasts and in other material we are preparing. If you have any questions or comments about the contents of this bulletin, please let us know, and we may try and respond in future bulletins. Also, if you know about or are involved in any struggles you would like us to report on, whether that is in your workplace, your community, your university, college or school, or have any suggestions or future topics that you would like us to cover, please contact us. The Marxist Workers Party is an affiliate of the Committee for a Workers' International, the CWI, building global working class unity in the struggle for a socialist South Africa, a socialist Africa, and a socialist world. If you would like to join the Marxist Workers Party or find out more about us, including building the CWI in Southern Africa, please visit our website at www.marxistworkersparty.org.za, find us on Facebook and Twitter, or call or WhatsApp us on 081 366 7375.